This is Arkeem Ra, and this is Fractal Weapons. I'm talking with Joseph Powell today, and today's subject is the different factions and groups within the secret space programs, their agendas, who gets along, who doesn't. So welcome, Joseph. Why don't you give a brief introduction of who you are?
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Joseph Powell. I've been in multiple programs, both here on Earth and in space. I've done quite a few interviews you can find online. Mainly, I talk about the abductions that happened to me as a child and also as an adult. And all in all, I basically have come forward to try to make people aware, activate people that I remember or that remember me, and just get everybody ready for what's coming.
What's coming?
Some crazy shit. I'll just put it that way.
You want to just leave it at that for now?
Yeah. We'll just leave it at that for now. Basically, I know that you wanted to talk about like what groups and factions that I know of.
Yeah,
Probably
so
just talk about the ones that I
let me
specifically
start with
remember.
question number one here. Sorry not to interrupt you, but question number one is something that I've been confused about is what group takes SSP victims first? Is there a specific group that usually takes us first? Is it random? Is there a group that takes our DNA and sells it to different groups? Because it seems to me like there's the Antarctica facility that you recall being in, where they did twinning with you and experiments. And I might have been there myself, but I don't have the recall of specifics enough to be able to tell you where I was when that kind of stuff happened to me. But yeah, I was just kind of wondering, like, what's square one for most people in these programs?
So, because there's a lot of time stuff, square one's not too easily put together, but I would probably say from what I remember, okay, is when I was around 8 years old, and normally it happens when you're around 7 or 8. I remember this, like, basically what would be perceived as the CIA or naval intelligence, one of those two, is what got a hold of me. And they did it through the school system, through testing is what they called it, aptitude testing, for me. And I was in a private school. Basically, they took me into a room. This was after my teacher had already set me down and started talking and asking questions. I don't know if you want me to go into all that or not, but this group,
Go into a little bit.
okay. Basically, I had been in the 3rd grade, and I had been going to this school since I was like little, up until the 3rd grade, and I had the same teacher, and her name was Lisa Oster. She's dead now, but she had called me over to the desk, and had asked me to sit down, and had started asking me, like what I thought about the military, and I was raised to love the military, you know what I mean? Because I had a lot of family members that served. So I sat there and I was telling her that I love the military, and she asked if I knew anything about the Navy. And as I was sitting there talking, and I had said that I love the military, there was another kid that walked over and sat down, and she was very upset because he was basically intervening in the conversation,
Talking to you specifically.
Yeah, like I think she was trying to do one-on-ones, kind of like a introduction, like one-on-one introductions, because it'd be like if you were getting an interview for like some kind of intelligence agency, and some random dude off the street walked over and sat down next to you, Like that was the feeling, you know?
Yeah.
It's like some random guy off the street just
And
walks
then
in,
you're like
sits down in the
7 or
interview.
8 years old, so it's kind of like you don't even realize what's going on. You just think you're getting asked some really unique and strange questions.
Yeah, so like she basically, not to put any less damping on it, like or less feelings on it, but she basically started asking me questions like, what I thought about the Navy, and I was like, I didn't know who the hell the Navy was at that time. And I was just like, oh, I don't know, who are they? And she started explaining kind of what the Navy was. I was like, oh, that's cool, and then she asked if I knew anything about the CIA, and it told me about her dad. Like first it was like, oh, she's like, my brother is in the Navy. And then, we went off of that to trailing into my father is in the CIA. And I was like, what does the CIA do? Like everything she brought up, I would be like, what do they do? Who are they? And, she started telling me that the CIA is basically morally ambiguous and, they do stuff that isn't looked at very well, more frowned upon, in shorter form. And I was like, oh, well, what do they do? And then she said that was classified. She's like, that's classified. I can't tell you, and I was like, oh, well, cool, And after that, like we had finished up our conversation with her telling me that asking if I wanted to meet her brother, and I was like, yeah, sure. Sounds like fun, because I was raised to respect and care about the military, even though, I didn't really know much about them. So like when she said I could meet her brother who was in the military, who was in the Navy, I was like, yeah, that sounds like an awesome idea,
It all sounds
Um,
very familiar.
yeah. And then from that point, like a week or two after that, they literally took one of the rooms that they had set aside. It was like a small room, a very small room in the school. It was at the Seventh Day Adventist Academy, um, which still exists even now. They've expanded. Actually, they greatly financially expanded. Their building expanded big time in the transition of that year that I was there. So I don't, and it was like the group that was dealing with us at that time was a mixture between, I feel, CIA, naval intelligence, from what I can gather, and a reptilian group. You know, um, and they were basically there to procure us, groom us, break us, rebuild us, and train us, and then sell us. That was who the group was. But they basically had the entire school on lockdown. They had the principal, and and the principal didn't even know they were even there. Like, they took over this area. They brought in computers at the time, which was like extremely rare to ever see a computer at the time. This is when I was like 8. You know what I mean? I
Right.
was born in 1988, 8 years after that. So it's like I think it was like 1990 something. You know,
Yeah.
Having computers was a rarity. You had to have either a company or a pretty good chunk of money. Like your average Joe didn't have a computer in his house.
Right.
Um, but yeah, they had a bunch of computers set up. I think they had some headphones at first, but you had which is weird because like I've had more memories come out, especially after you started talking about it with the questionnaires. Like they had a set of questions that they asked us, and after you answer those questions, then you played this game, which was the old Atari uh, pinball game, or I can't remember what the heck the name is off the top of my head. I always forget that, but they had us play this game, and then they just kept upping the difficulty until they weeded out a bunch of the kids, and then once they narrowed it down, then they started the process of playing with our eyes closed, and that weeded out pretty much all the kids that weren't psychic. Um, we had to play with our eyes closed, and once that got to a point, then again the process of them putting the goggles on us, the VR headsets that they had at the time, which were pretty sleek, not as sleek as the ones we have now, but damn were close back then, you know, which didn't even exist then at all.
Right.
And I remember like going to Six Flags and like they had one of the VR, the big ones with the big blue headsets that you could, use your play 3D and stuff. I remember going there later on and being like, oh wow, this is a lot bigger than I remember. And the guy
I believe
arguing with the
that
guy.
that started for you was through the public school system.
No, no, no. See, it was private. It was a private school that I went
Oh,
to.
excuse me.
But
I
so
just,
it could be that's the thing. It could be public or private. It doesn't matter. They'll
yeah,
get to you,
that was just a slip on my part.
Um, but they had the teacher MK Ultra. They had they had my teacher MK Ultra. There was a guy who came in. I mean, he was the typical programmer that you would hear about basically. He had sandy blonde hair, white dress shirt, short sleeve, khaki pants, and black dress shoes. You know, carried a clipboard, wrote down, wrote down notes on all of us. When they put on the headsets and we started going through that, they played a bunch of different things. So like the first memories I had was it was being pushed off a cliff, pushed out of a plane, hitting an ocean. And like if we would hit the ocean, he would walk around and take a spray bottle and spray us in the face to simulate that we were hitting it to feel as if we were there. I remember like taking it off and like looking around the room and there was like 7 other kids that were there, including me was 8 in total. And they all were like just zombied out. The closest thing I've been able to explain it to would be everybody wearing VR goggles, who was sitting in that room with Mark Zuckerberg when he was first coming out with his Facebook stuff, with the VR stuff, and you're just sitting there like zombies, you know. But they were just zombied out, and eventually, like you would have in the middle of that, you would have a woman being fucked, and it would flash. It wasn't like continuous; it would just flash random, and you would hear the sound and everything. And then she climaxed, and then the person that was fucking her pulled out a knife and killed her. And I remember my head hurting when that happened, and I remember taking off the goggles or taking off the VR headset basically, and like looking around, and like she was, and what was weird is it was the teacher and this random guy that was on the flashing of the video. So it was like some weird distortion for me, because it was like I just watched my teacher have sex and then get killed, and then took off the headset. She's standing right there in the doorway talking to our programmer. After that had happened, like they started splitting our minds doing that, and then from that point, they there was other videos too, like combat videos, like in real time, like Desert Storm videos with people getting shot and different tactics being done, and like literally watching it happen. And it was basically feeding into our subconscious mind. And then they started taking us, once they fractured us through using VR tech and other means, because I remember them picking me up and taking me to a base, and like basically that's where they would rape us and torture us until we fractured. I don't remember the full process of it. I just had flashes. I remember seeing my teacher there in the underground base, and I remember seeing my teacher around town randomly. She would just show up randomly, so I believe that she was my handler at the time. But after they fractured us, then they started the process of, for me, writing down what the programmer was like. Oh, write down 10 cool names that you like, So I wrote down 10 cool names. What I have learned now is it was more than 10 cool names. It was like every day you had to keep writing names down, and it was because if you wrote the names down, you were more attached to them, so they could attach your fractured alters to a name. with a bunch of numbers in front of it. And then that's how they would that's your activation codes, and there's different kinds too, um,
Yeah, like
but
activation codes that have to do with movies and stuff.
yeah. And I remember watching a lot of movies, as a matter of fact. So I don't know if that was part of it too, but beyond that, that was the group that got a hold of me first, and they fractured us, and then they took us to this abandoned school or abandoned mall, and that was Randall Park Mall. The internal guts of the mall was shut down, but there was like maybe 5 businesses that were still open externally. So like you can go in from the outside into those businesses, but you couldn't go into the guts of the mall. And they would take all of us kids, like they would load us up in a white van, and the people that were taking me and the other 7 kids, they were Navy. And basically they would train us there, that we would do battle royales, and we'd suit up, and like we do PT training every day that we were at school. And even after we left that school, like
I
they
have a,
literally
I have a
they offered
question.
they offered my
Did
I'll
you
put it this
also
way.
attend school as well? And did they did that with time travel, or how was that all working?
I believe it was done with time travel. Yeah, like at that time they were doing time travel. So it was like they had, like, you would drive in the white van, they were able to open a portal, take you through the portal. So like they would park the van on the way to LAX. There was I started realizing what was going on, so they black bagged me. But for me, they would take me on the way to LAX, get off right before the airport, and there would be this area that they would take us to in this parking garage, and then they would get us out, have us basically strip down, change into uniforms, um, and then walk us through a portal, from what I remember. And then from there, we would end up in Randall Park Mall, which was way the fuck away from where I lived, you know? So I think that they opened a portal that went back in time to bring us to a certain point while we were there. And then they would take us there, and they would do our PT, they would do our training. That's where they started like who was going to be in the assassin program. And I remember the Joint Chiefs of Staff in 2002, from 2002 to like 2001 to 2002, the ones that were Joint Chiefs of Staff then showed up there. They have alters too, some of them, not all of them. And they basically reviewed where the money was going and if it was working. So it was a multi-layered military operation, and also separately, they had people that were wearing business suits and stuff that were separate from our military, that were probably the corporations, like ICC and stuff like that. But they would be sitting normally on, like, in between the top floor and the bottom floor. There was a middle area where they would sit, and they would watch us and see what we would do. And then they would decide from that point, which group you would go to. Um, but they would train, they would take once they figured out what you were being put in, they would train those alters. And it's been talked about where like they'll fracture off alters that they already trained, so they don't have to retrain another alter. They can just use you fractured from that already trained alter and train you specifically for something else, expand your training for a different job. So I remember like being in assassin programming, like assassin training to work for the CIA, naval intelligence, all sorts of different groups at that point. But they would sell you from that point to them.
So
So it was like
what groups are the United States that are
um,
involved?
from
That are
what
all US
from what I've gathered from my own personal thing, there's quite a few groups, but from what I gathered from my own personal memories, you had Montauk, which originally it was ran by the Army, like Army intelligence, from what I remember. Um, but they also still got different branches to like get clothing and all sorts of other stuff. But it was basically being financed by military intelligence and other money, any excess money that we needed, we stole, right? But that's Montauk was ran by Army intelligence, but the base that we had, I believe, was on a Air Force, was an Air Force base, if I'm not mistaken. Originally was a military base or an Army base, but transitioned into an Air Force base. I'd have to look more into that, but that's what I recall. But I know that it was Army intelligence, and that was under Stubblebine, and our director was John Alexander. They called him Jack Pruitt when we were there. And the person that Stubblebine was under, who oversaw the money, was a person that was above him. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I posted all that stuff on the Fractal Weapons page for Facebook, but you can go and look at that, anybody that wants to see that or whatever.
And for our viewers or listeners, Stubblebean is the man who is responsible for completely restructuring the command structure of the United States military. That is a fact.
For psychic warfare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all out in the open. It's public information.
Yeah, they wrote books on that shit. Yeah.
Yeah, and these are the guys that look at us as pieces of property.
Yep. So that was one of the groups. The other group I remember came from Project Ibis, and I believe that group spun off of Montauk because of the time wars that we were in with Nazi Germany, and that group came back in time from when we were children, like babies, and took us. And that group is a Nazi group, like a legitimate Nazi group. And they basically took us from babies and trained us until we were, oh man, like I think I had to have been like 7-ish or 8-ish before that base was hit by an American faction, American military, like Delta Force status. And it was being overseen by an actual Nazi who had a black Nazi uniform as well. So it was like two different Nazi factions, which was weird. But that group transitioned into a how would you put it? An Earth-based defense group, which took out aliens that were here that shouldn't have been.
Ibis did, or one, or that gotten taken over after
Like,
Ibis.
but yeah, like basically transition from Project Ibis, which is what it's known as, or Project Mannequin slash, it was like Project Mannequin and then transition for Project Ibis, but it like basically got taken over by a military group that was being overseen by a Nazi dude. And we were on another American military base at that point, like we were there. We went to a place in Canada, got transferred from that location to a military base, and those individual alters that they kept lived on that military base. And there was quite a few of us permanently. We could watch shows and news and all that from a TV. We could see what's going on the outside. We weren't allowed to leave unless we went on missions or you were a certain individual, you know. And I remember that, and like we used to hunt down alien groups, but Project Ibis in particular was brainwashing for the 1,000-year Reich they wanted to bring about, because they wanted to counter what happened with Montauk.
Because Montauk changed the timeline from the Nazi timeline to this timeline that we're currently inhabiting.
That's pretty much it, yeah. So that group, that's why I said with the time stuff, like stuff got changed quite a bit, but that was one of the groups. There's a CIA, like legit CIA, where we've been taken into these programs. And the way that you would know if you were in that group, it was assassin programming. They would take you to the site. You would go into this room. You would sit down at the table. Another individual who was CIA would come in. There would be a military guy that was behind the one-way mirror, that you would be behind you, watching you, along with scientists and doctors, and they would drag a dude in with a black bag over their head, drag them over to the corner. So like your door would be on your left-hand side, the one-way mirror would be behind you. A guy would come and sit in front of you. He would be sitting at a table. There'd be 2 chairs. And then behind him, caddy corner on your right-hand side, they would drag this guy in and put him in the corner. They would place a pistol in front of you and tell you, pick up the gun and execute him. You know, and I remember like not going on doing it right away. I remember, I think I got shot a few times, you know, until you basically just picked up the pistol. I remember asking like, what do you do? And it's like, it didn't matter. He's a terrorist. Execute him, you know? And eventually I just picked up a pistol and shot him point blank. But I remember like, because I failed, they had brought me back there and there was another kid there already wound up. And he basically, this kid, and he wasn't the only kid that this happened to, but this kid specifically, he had shoulder length blonde hair, piercing blue eyes. It was like kind of dirty blonde, piercing blue eyes. He was like just MK ultra'd out basically at that point, just mind controlled out. And he had executed the dude in the corner, shot the guy that was sitting in front of him, and proceeded to get through the door. He opened the door and I was in the hallway because I showed up early. The guy that brought me too early. So I was waiting in the hallway because I remember the guy having an argument with the scientist that was there. They were going back and forth, and then he was like, just wait here. And like, dude left. I stood in the hallway where I was told. This kid came out with a pistol. And I mean, he came out, well, like trained. He was trained. He walked through the door, looked, pointed the pistol at me, and I was like, whoa. I was like, hey man, whoa, calm down, you know? And he was like, he looked at me and he said, friend or foe? And I said, he said, friend or foe? And I was like, friend, I'll be your friend. And he was like, oh, and I just sensed him, you know, I sensed who he was just as a person, because it was me too. It was like me looking at myself, but it was a total different person,
Yeah.
you know? And I just, same training. That was the point. I felt it. He felt our connection through our struggle, and he lowered the pistol. And I was like, I'll be your friend, you know? I really meant it too, because like I understood what he was going through. And all of a sudden that scientist came through the door and walked out and was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And he lifted up the pistol. He's like, and he was like, calm down, put the gun down, put the gun down. You see, your mission was successful. Put the gun down, you know? And he barely put it down, but I just remember like from that point, I went in the room after that. We got taken separately. We got separated, and then I went back later, and then I had to do my part of the same process. Except for I shot the guy instead of shooting everybody else, you know. Um, but that was part of the beginning for the assassin programming, and I believe that altar that did that, they fractured that altar. So that was CIA assassin programming training, and they fractured that altar, and some of the altars that they fractured went to different programs. So there's a program for the Navy, which has been called the Black Navy. And it was, hold on one second. That program was called Black Manta. And those altars that serve in Black Manta are ruthless. They are highly trained, broken down like old school. I would say old school forms of MK Ultra. But I remember being a kid. I remember going to Diego Garcia. We were trained in Diego Garcia. We were taken through portals with the person who trained us. Like my first introduction to the person who was my trainer at Diego Garcia, which he's public. His name's Mark Damasio. He was taken by the Navy. He remembers quite a bit. He remembered me. I remembered him. Other people in the community remembered him that I know that were in my unit. And we would we went through a portal into another planet because he had came from that planet. We had a blood transfusion before we did that. Like he was missing his fucking arm. It was wild. And we were sent basically to kill whatever the fuck took his arm. To take out whatever took his arm out and set up a perimeter so that they could go through and find out what the fuck was going on that planet. What they were looking for, I don't know.
Who was that?
That was Black Manta. But that also transitioned for Black Manta. They have an underground water base where they, right now, currently, we did a bunch of different stuff. We kidnapped people for 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 training and doing the same shit we were doing. We assassination, torture, you name it, basically.
Are any of the groups that are United States based infighting?
Of course.
Of course. Okay.
Yeah. Well, everybody's fighting for the resources and to further their agendas, each compartmentalized group, basically. But yeah, currently Black Manta, my alter there is Jonah. He is in an underground water base where you have what has been described as the naughty Nordics, the naughty Germans, where they're basically shooting some kind of torpedoes underwater that blow up and open portals into other worlds, other water worlds, grabbing sea creatures from other worlds, pulling them through, taking them, taking their DNA, mixing their DNA with the human DNA to create some kind of aquatic super soldier. So it's pretty intense. But yeah.
So those are just the United States groups that you know of.
What was that?
That's just the United States, and that was like what, 4 or 5 different groups.
Yeah, that was I think it was like an American Canadian operation that took over Project Ibis's kids. And the point of Project Ibis is that they took individuals that had angel, seraphim, or archangel souls that were here, and like we weren't considered humans to that group, the original group that was training us. We were weapons. It didn't matter what skin color we had, because we were to be basically the leading generals of their armies, and they brainwash us with all sorts of fucking shit. Like it's a pretty intense group, but that's what's weird is it wasn't about your skin color. It was about the mission overall, and it didn't matter as long as you had certain souls. You weren't even perceived as human to them. You were just a weapon to be used to further their agenda. But that was that group. Beyond that, though, there's other groups that were American. You have Solar Warden, which was part of the Navy, and that one works on Earth and in space. They do time travel for their naval stuff, to make sure that they keep power. They trained us at Fort Warden. They would take us back in time, so that we could train with soldiers there at Fort Warden. They had us go into other timelines so we could steal the other timelines military groups' resources before their timeline collapsed. We would help them with intel until their time, knowing that their timeline was going to collapse, steal their shit and leave them behind. Then we went into space as well, so we got taken into space, and basically we patrol the solar system. Like Solar Warden went in basically, and they're still fighting Nachtwaffen, which is a separate group, which is a German breakaway from World War II, who won the war. And, basically the common population doesn't understand that yet, but they're going to start learning eventually. but basically they went into space to fight the Nazis. And that's what they trained us in Solar Warden to remember and know. We went to school for our specific set of knowledge we needed, like to colleges and stuff. They had reunions too, where like as kids we would be taken to a reunion randomly, like a bar where there would be a party of kids that were in that unit that we were in. I haven't really talked about that much. But yeah, we got on a big ass ship, went into space. We lived on that ship for 20 years. I've done like on top of doing other stuff, you know, being in a transport ship. We sold because we were trying to get intelligence. We we would clone people on the planet, leave the baby souls that were in the original clone body, not take the actual people, and then we brought them along to sell them to the Germans, so that we could gain intel on what they had. I remember doing missions like that. I remember like it was a reconnaissance mission basically under the cover of selling slaves, but they didn't know that they were just cloned baby souls, you know, because it's like you have a grown adult and a baby soul in a grown adult body. They can't even walk or talk, you know. So that was pretty much Solar Warden in a nutshell. They're basically taking the war, continuing the war.
So it's still in a way ongoing.
Oh yeah, it's still ongoing. Still ongoing. It hasn't ended. It's just the Germans are in control. You know, they
They're the
are.
ones who have the most power.
Yes, because they joined up with the Draconian Empire. And you know, when you join up with the biggest bully on the yard and they punch you in the face and nobody around you moves, and you join up with that bully and you decide to start kicking people for that bully and people still aren't moving, I mean, of course you're going to have the biggest power, you know. That's basically the sum of it. And there's other empires too. It's not just the Draconian Empire. You got a Mantid Empire, and there's like two other groups. They're some really ugly fuckers, but one's weaker than the other three, and then you have the second weakest, and then you have the Mantid Empire, and then you have the Draconian Empire. The Mantid and Draconian Empires are probably the strongest. The Mantid one is more of a threat, I would say. But we happen to be within the jurisdiction of the Draconian Empire.
Tell me a little bit about the Mantid Empire. I've never heard about it.
Well, that's a separate situation. The Mantid Empire is basically insectoids. There's different kinds. Pretty much most of your insects on the planet are sentient, capable, intelligent beings that are 6 foot, 7 foot, 14 foot tall. You know, they are highly telepathic, extremely telepathic. Probably the most empathic beings I've come across, even more than the Draco. I mean, kind of on
Telepathic
par.
or empathic?
Both,
Okay.
but they tend to have hive minds. So they work in a hive mind state.
Yep.
They, I don't know, man. Like I've had interactions with them. I don't really care for them, you know, just as an individual. But they've been used. You know, it's like they have their individual groups that work along with our military or with the Germans.
From what I remember about them, they don't have names and they just let us call them whatever they want, give them designations because they're hive mind.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds pretty damn familiar. Yeah.
Like I remember there's a Mantid that I knew and I called him Steve. And when I got that memory back, I was like, what the, why? And I got the memory back of they don't have names. They have no
Yeah.
need for them. So you
Like,
just
hey,
call them something, you call them whatever. And of course, you're not going to call them like Andromeda or call them a weird alien name. That'd be disrespectful. You just give them a normal ass name. And
Yeah.
that's just, it was a funny thing that I remembered. But anyway,
I,
and on
I
subject,
like,
that's literally the only memory I have of any mantids. It's just that memory, which is fragmented still. I'll get more of it back as time passes, I'm sure.
yeah, well, I guess it just depends on if you're at war with them or not, which we have been. Um, but yeah, they definitely have a hive mind, and normally it's under a queen, I believe, if I'm correct, if I remember correctly. But it's like they try to have some form of individuality, but they really don't, It's like a perceived form so that you feel normal around them. But
Yeah,
they kind of grow a personality around the name that you give them in a
yeah,
way. But yeah,
yeah.
um,
I think everybody kind of does.
yeah, but yeah, so that's one of the empires, and they're not stupid, and they definitely would like to take more power and be bigger than they are, just like any empire. Um, I would say like if you really wanted to look at like how this shit works, there's a video game you could play which is called Stellaris, and it's all about getting off a planet, building an empire, and taking over other planets, and you know manipulating them, uh, having vassals, and all sorts of shit. Like that basically sums it up, you know, in a nutshell, for people that really want to understand why. It's all about power basically. Um, but beyond that, we have our masters here on this planet that own the planet, um, which are the Jahami. They're called Jahami. Um, and I got that name from Penny, but it fits, and it sounds extremely familiar. And I know that they exist, and they're basically the ones that we believe are gods. Uh, they also go as under the guise of being called the Anunnaki. Um, a lot of us have lived lives as Anunnaki, or Draco, or especially the ones that are like us, which were being called star seeds, some name that got attached to what we are. We're not original humans from this planet and original baby souls. We're much older, and that's why we have the ability to tap into the powers that we have. Um,
Yeah.
so beyond that, because I don't, that's not what this conversation was about. But then you have the ICC. That's been talked about and discussed. It's basically multiple corporations that work together.
What does that stand for? ICC.
I think it's Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate,
Okay, that sounds right.
something along those lines. I think that's what it's been called.
Okay.
They're basically, they'll do whatever the fuck it takes. They're basically like multiple corporations on the planet. They are corporations on the planet, as a matter of fact. So they will do whatever the fuck it takes to get as much wealth and as much resources and as much technology as possible. You know, um, and they are the ones who mainly put you in robot bodies at this point. So you're a forever soldier until your fucking robot body breaks down. And you can only hope and pray that they don't just stick your fucking soul into another robot body. Yeah. I don't know what you would pray to. I guess, the all creator, the creator of everything. But he gives as much of a fuck about you as you give a fuck about an ant that you step on when you walk on a curb, you know?
Yeah, but that's a whole nother subject.
Yeah.
So we've covered quite a few groups so far.
There's Nachtwaffen, which a lot of people have heard about. That's the German breakaway that broke away from Hitler. They went to Antarctica. That's been documented by Operation High Jump, which they've tried to say is a lie and bullshit, but You know, you had your fucking, we went there with a fuck ton of of ships and came back with nothing, basically. So, you know, put two and two together. You know what I mean? And the guy that openly talked about what happened there uh, got pushed out of a window or jumped out of a window randomly, being totally a sane person and the head of, you know, one of the heads of our military, you know, um, came back talking about fucking ships that could fly from one end of the pole to the next in a matter of minutes. Started talking, I think he wrote a book about Inner Earth. And I can't remember his name off the top of my head right now. You know, there's so many freaking names
Yeah.
of these military people that that I've remembered or I recognize. I don't think he's dead either. I think he actually runs one of the programs, as a matter of fact. I think his death was faked on purpose so that he could basically start running one of the black projects freely. I don't know if he did it willfully or not. Probably not. Our government and military tend not to give a fuck. you know, clearly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he went, the Germans were there, the Draco were there. The Draco basically were like, they came out along with the Germans and beat the fuck out of our Navy. And uh, they basically stayed in Antarctica because they specifically went for a mission to exterminate the Nazis in Antarctica. That was their mission statement. They failed. And you never heard another fucking word about it again. Penny's talked about it where they flew over the White House. That's been documented. Just to
The
basically,
UFOs that were over the White House?
yeah, that was basically them laying their dicks on the American government. They plop their dick down on our face and they're like, "We own you," and they're like, and they were like, "We don't want everybody to know about what's going on." So they're like, "Yes, okay, you know, here's a bunch of children, like you asked, you know." They asked basically for the equivalent of what you would perceive as taxes that the Draco asked for, except for they're not eating us, you know. We're just given to them to work for them for free. So they're not a good group either. None of these groups, by the way, that I'm mentioning are good. Not a single one. They all kidnap children. They all rape children. They all fracture children. They all use these same children in these programs. None of them are good. Um, but yeah, so Nachtwaffen is the German space fleet. It's basically called Night Weapon. Some people know them as Dark Fleet, which is, you know, if you're working for a specific group and you want to demonize another group, you come up with evil names, you know. So Dark Fleet, ooh, you know, they're not good. They are evil. They're all evil, but that's the point of calling them Dark Fleet, so that you see good versus evil. It's an easy paradigm for mind control. Nachtwaffen is basically the German space fleet, and they work
They're
for the
separate from
Draconian.
are they separate from the Nazis though? That's one of the things that always confuses me. That's what Penny
I
said.
mean, my personal opinion from what I've seen with my own eyes, they keep slaves. Uh, it's mainly the German people that they try to breed and keep their people alive. If you're like us, technically you're a half breed to them. Um, uh, they,
But Ibis and Nachtwaffen are separate, is what it sounds like.
yes, Ibis and Nachtwaffen are definitely separate. Yes. Um, they keep a lot of the same Germanic history and iconography, symbolisms. They
For instance, the Nachtwaffen symbol is a eagle perched on a chain, which is around the earth. And for
the bird of war, yeah.
for Ibis or the Nazis, it's perched on a circle, which when the circle has a swastika.
Yeah,
So
pretty
very
much.
similar groups, but they're also at odds.
And it's not just Earth, they also have one for Mars. It's whatever planet they're overseeing
Yeah.
or working for specifically. Jurisdiction, I would say, would probably be a better word. Whatever jurisdiction they're working in. They're clustered not only in this solar system, but out of our solar system. Solar Warden has gone out of our solar system. Not very many people remember that yet. Some do, some just haven't come forward with it. You have a group known as Radiant Guardian, which protects our solar system and deals with incoming and outgoing traffic. So if you're coming into our solar system, unless you're like the Germans who just come through our sun, our sun portal, or if you're just some alien group that's like, fuck you, we're bigger than you, you're not going to stop us. You basically go through customs, which is what Radiant Guardian is. They're, I believe, an American group. Not 100% on that yet, but most of the people that serve there have served in these other programs too. Solar Warden goes through them. They have basically an understanding, like an agreement, like that's just part of, you know, you go into a certain area with your military, you have to check in, you know, but they're human based. That hasn't been talked about publicly much. I do have memories of that. Just bits and pieces from being in Solar Warden. Basically bullshitting as we're going through and like showing our luggage and shit and what we're bringing in back into our solar system.
Interesting. That's the first time I've ever heard of that group.
Yeah. I only heard about that because I was talking to somebody and like I recognized him and they activated my memories and I was like, where the fuck do I know you from? He's like, he told me what he worked in and I was like, that makes sense, you know? And I just remember bullshitting with him where we're walking through customs basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's that group. There's another group, you have a group that's known as Shaw House, which is basically bloodline family, Draco, reptilian. They're contractors basically, but they have money. They would be like merchants, like they deal in resources. So they exchange resources for more resources. So like it's like they're bankers basically, but they're in space and uh, they're a lot different than the other group that would be who the Germans supposedly are trying to escape from, which Penny talked about, which is the Illuminati or whatever the fuck the name is. But yeah, so you have Shaw House. There's a lot of people that are public that I haven't outright named that are part of Shaw House. You have altars that were there, and basically it's a bloodline. You make as much resources as you can for your branch of your bloodline. It's like a corporate kind of setting, like you'll come in, you spend time with other branches of the same bloodline, and you go out and try to build wealth and expand your power. You normally get a black dragon when you're a baby. Some people get two. It just depends. And we're all basically bloodline related, and they're just ruthless. They are ruthless. They raise us ruthlessly. It's like a cycle. You get raised to be heartless, basically. I would say would be the best explanation for them. And they can run shit. They give resources to these groups like Nachtwaffen or Solar Warden, or if they're looking for outside money. they can do that. Other groups, they also took us and they took those individuals, cloned them, and they delve into the slave trade, but they trust their own people. They don't trust like an outside group to do their dirty work. So they'll clone you and have a different altar for that clone and have you sell slaves for technology. And your vessel will be seen and understood as a slave vessel. They don't serve Nachtwaffen, and they don't serve any group but themselves, but they will sell slaves for technology. And normally it was human slaves, from what I remember. There's the Merchant Marine Fleet, which when you hear that, you think American military, right? No, it's a Draco Gray alien group that basically sells slaves. They're slave mercenary. They're mercenaries that delve in the slave trade extremely, at an extreme level, and they sell slaves of all kinds for technology. Slavery is a big, big, big money maker, resource maker, technology gain, technology builder. Humans are everywhere. Like even if they wiped out Earth, they're still everywhere. I remember serving as a captain of a ship for the Merchant Marine Fleet. The altar that served there, I'm still trying to put together what that altar's name was, but they basically sell human slaves. So they'll come here to Earth and they'll get human slaves, take them off the planet, and sell them to different alien groups, Zetas, you name it. Nothing's off limits. Or they'll just go to other planets and literally drop ship on planets and just enslave the entire planet and start
Wow.
selling them. Men, women, children, doesn't matter. No
Why are they
mercy.
called the Merchant Marine Fleet?
Well, it's like I don't know specifically why, but I would equate it to they're merchants. They're sellers of slaves, man. And they're a fleet, They have tons of ships, tons of fucking bodies, tons of people working for them, humans, other alien groups. But I would say the Merchant Marine Fleet would be, like I said, they're merchants and they're soldiers and they're a fleet. I mean, it's kind of that's how I would simplify it, but that's just what they call themselves. I
Okay.
remember them saying Merchant Marine Fleet to me, and I was like, "Oh, so you're like the Marine Corps?" They were like, I remember Gray and the Draco like looking at each other, going, kind of, but not, And I'm like, "Oh, well, the altar that was talking
Same
to him at the
concept,
time,
but not the same.
yeah, yeah, they were just like they kind of like. I remember like when I was conversating, because the only reason I got picked up by them is because of a situation that occurred, and it was kind of like a payback situation. And they made it seem like it was like, oh yeah, you want to work with us? It wasn't really a choice.
Basically, long story short, as long as people aren't aware of this technology, the time travel technology, the cloning, the age reversing, all this different stuff, all these different groups can just come in, trade people willy nilly. And not only that, elite members of society who have the technology can do it in the highest echelons of, the elite. But I'm just kind of just reiterating the fact here that if you listen to all these different groups and what their agendas are, they all have one common underlying thing protecting them, and that's the fact that this is secret.
Mhm.
And that's why we're public, is because we want people to understand that this is real. And nobody's actually really safe from these programs. Point blank, period.
Pretty much.
I mean, obviously
That's
they take people that are psychic or old souls, star seeds, whatever you want to call them. But there are also people who are taken for other reasons and don't necessarily have to have these abilities. And I just want to reiterate that no one's safe, and slavery obviously is wrong, and it's a huge part of, unfortunately, the galaxy at large. Um, and that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about slavery.
Well, no, you have all these great groups that are in space that want to protect us, bro. Come on.
That's
Like
what
the Federation of Planets of an aligned groups of pussies that are afraid of the Draco. They're like, no, slavery is illegal. And they're just like, oh yeah, what are you gonna do about it? We want to protect the people, even though they're like, oh yeah, you've been sitting on our asses with our thumbs up our butt watching little children get raped and kidnapped this entire time, but now they want to help us. Uh, these groups that contact people on the planet and act like there's some great things, like you got the Palladians, which are basically the Germans fucking with humans, trying to get them to be like, oh yes, please come and take us willfully, different groups, it's always good when they get consent. There are laws, clearly, there are laws that they technically can't breach, but they do get in trouble eventually. But it's like, you got to really do some hardcore shit, man. Blowing up planets is one of them, ordering the destruction of planets, genociding masses. They'll tap you out. They'll be like, hey, buddy, you have two options. Change or die. That's change or completely die. That's it. Those are your options.
There was one more group that you've talked about in your interviews that I wanted to cover, and I'm drawing a blank on it.
The Ashtar Command.
The Ashtar Command, yes. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that and give a little disclaimer as far as the CIA, V2K, stuff like that?
Sure. Okay. So, I mean, there's a group known as the Ashtar Command. It's been talked about. This group normally goes around to planets that are dying, like the species are dying on these planets, and they'll deliver food, resources to them. They try to give it to good for the betterment of it, but if bad groups within that species get a hold of it, it doesn't matter to them as long as the species survives. These are some of the things, the mission statements that they have. But you do have a CIA group that has taken a hold of that information and is using it to mind control people and create Jesus, Space Jesus, which doesn't exist in the real Ashtar Command. Commander Ashtar believes in, how would you put it? Their religious belief is meditation. Their chakra points. They really don't talk about a god at all. They don't hinder you if you serve with them. If you have a certain belief in some god or whatever the fuck, they're just like, okay. They will show up. They will use holographic technology to present themselves as your god if they are trying to be passive. And when they show up, if you're hostile, they have a pheromone that comes out of their smart suits that they wear that kind of dulls your senses and makes you all loopy, makes you think that they're good. You're space friends,
Yeah.
We don't want to throw a fucking spear through your chest. They're different. They did not take me by force. I remember them taking me through my consent. I did give them consent. They showed up after the Germans dropped me off. And actually, sorry, let me rephrase that. After Solar Warden dropped me off, they showed up. And they told me that they could help heal me. Because at first it was like I heard one of them spoke over the intercom, and he is a gray with 4 arms, like a tall gray with 4 arms. He's a carnivorous being. His name's been talked about, and publicly. He was one of the people that took over that transmission way back in England, which they try to say was debunked. But you know, if your military wants you to be stupid and keep control of you, they're going to debunk anything.
Yeah.
You know, they either threaten or pay off whoever they need to debunk what they need to debunk.
Never heard about that before. There was a broadcast in England.
Yeah, they took over this transmission in England, man, and just like started saying, "We are the Ashtar Command, and I'm so and so," you know, and like, um, told everybody that you know they wanted to help them or some shit. Like, I don't know. You could find it online though. You know, it was quite interesting. But I remember that being talked first over this big intercom when their ship showed up. Like a rift in space, and then the ship came through, and then it closed up, and then it was like, "Hello, friend," you know. And he started talking, and I was like, "Oh fuck," you know, because I literally was scared shitless and almost shit myself from the last craft, and then I just saw this other craft come through, and it's like, "Hello, friend," and I'm like, no, 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 no." And then Commander Ashtar came over the intercom, um, kind of calmed me down a little, and I ended up. He asked if I wanted to come with him. They were going to leave if I didn't. Like they were not trying to take me by force. And when you served on a ship, if you were what you would perceive as bigoted towards aliens, he would kick you the fuck off his ship. They would literally bring you straight back to where they got you from and drop your ass the fuck off. So if I think it's like xenophobic would be the word.
Yeah.
Um, if you if if you weren't cohesive, they would take you back. Like you never forced to stay there. You know, and I'm not saying that everything was great when I served. You know, the beings that they really are, like Ashtar, is not the way that they present themselves. The look that they show online with Ashtar, that's what he looks like. But our little minds couldn't fathom what they really look like. Would be the better explanation. Um, but that group, it's different. You know, you feel loved, respected. They don't force you into any job. They basically let you pick the job you want to do. Um, that way you're happy, you know, doing what you're doing when you're on the ship. Or, you know, if you want to be like an ambassador in a way, they'll make you that, you know. You're not forced into any little job like they would do for Solar Warden or Nachtwaffen, where they're like, "Oh, you're going to be here and this is where you're going to be, period." End of discussion, you know. But I do have a lot of memories of that. Is there anything specific you wanted me to answer?
Well, I kind of just wanted you to talk about it really, and you covered it pretty well. And also, just in a nutshell, there's people that don't believe that the Ashtar Command is real because of the CIA thing. You pretty much covered the whole thing when it comes to that group.
Yeah, well, I mean, like the CIA is fucked up, man. You know, they want to create cults so that they can always control people, you know?
It also helps make the whole thing look, the whole idea of spaceships and aliens and everything look ridiculous.
Well, yeah, I mean, who's gonna look at it and be like, "Oh, space Jesus." Yeah, okay, you know?
I actually went to a UFO group in my hometown one time that I found online, and I went in there, and that's what these people were talking about. They're talking about space Jesus being on a UFO, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, I think they call them in these groups Sananda or some shit. I'm like, what?
They're just straight up calling him Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they call him Jesus, but his other name is Sananda or some bullshit, you know? Like it's weird shit. Um,
Yeah, who knows
at
really?
least they got at least they got Ashtar's look like look on point, but you know, but the CIA will contact you using V2K and play as if they are him. Or that being
How do you
specifically it.
tell if the CIA is using V2K on you?
That's a good question. For me personally, I feel like if you're not wearing,
It's voice to skull, by the way, for the people listening. It's a
yeah, and
voice carrier that goes into your
that's
skull. It's a technology that they have a patent for.
it's a public technology. Yep. Um, yeah. Well, you can wear like a Faraday cage beanie over your head, which tends to help discern if it's CIA or V2K. That's a big situation if you want to cut them out from contacting you. Plus, it helps too because like there's a bunch of frequencies that are always fucking with us as psychics, empaths. I got to say, wearing one, I don't own one, but I got to wear one one time, and I don't know why I haven't bought one at this point, but um, I got to say I've never felt so calm in my life as I did when I wore that because it felt like there was just nothing. I was just relaxed.
Huh.
Yeah, that was a
What kind
weird
of hat is that?
experience in here now. Huh?
What kind of hat is it?
I would have to go look it up. It was covered in one of Penny's interviews on her channel. She put the description, like dropped the description of it and the name of it and where to find it in the description, in the chat.
Okay.
It was one of my interviews. I'll have to look through it. I'll probably post in the Fractal group later.
Yeah.
It's just one of the groups out there that makes them, but it's basically a Faraday cage for your head, you know. Um, but anyways, there's another group I was going to cover. Trying to think of it right now. There's so many of them, man. You got all these little groups just running around that aren't even big groups. They're just little groups trying to become big groups. You got lunar operations. Uh, I've served as a grunt there. And normally I remember being like a soldier and walking around on the surface of the moon with rifles and a suit. There's Mars Defense Force. I've served in Mars Defense Force. They're the Germans' Mars militia, basically, even though it's made up of people that aren't fully German.
What is the relationship between the
Just
Americans?
us,
What is
killing
the
for them.
relationship between the Americans and the Germans on Mars?
What was that?
What is the relationship between the Americans and Germans that are on Mars?
Sure, they don't trust them. Either side. We are the enemy.
But do they try to get along, or do they trade resources sometimes?
I think that they probably work together at some point, but mainly it's like we have our territory, you have yours.
Because I recall them working together.
Yeah. Yeah, they it just depends on what American group you're with. You know, but yeah, they do work together. I know that their main enemies, Nachtwaffen and Mars Defense Force's main enemies are the ICC. I don't remember them ever working together, ever. Like they fucking hate each other.
Yeah.
They consider them the bankers in space, from what Penny's even explained, and I literally know exactly what she's talking about.
Yeah.
They fucking hate each other. That's why it's kind of funny when you hear some people come out and they're like, "Oh, they work together," and da da da. No, they don't. They fucking hate each other. Just like what's the group? I can't remember what the fuck they call themselves. It slips my mind. It's the Alliance. That's what the Alliance. The Alliance is basically a branch of the ICC. Kidnap people that from Nachtwaffen and other groups where they've taken over them and MK Ultra'd them basically and put them back in their positions, to infiltrate their groups. It's like a group within a group, from what I remember. Uh, they're not here. The Alliance isn't here to save us. That's a crock of shit.
It gets confusing. There's so many groups.
There is, but none of them are here to help us. I just want to reiterate that. Like, you have all these people like, oh, the Alliance is here to save us. It's like, no, it's not. No, it's not. Space Force.
I don't know if this is on topic or not, but it is for me. What is any hope of us getting out of this shit and not being a part of it ever again?
If you want my opinion, it's to activate all of our people. And if we activate enough of our people and we integrate enough of ourselves as fast as we can before they fucking solidify complete control and start wiping out all the humans on the planet, I think we can definitely turn it around. And I think that people are living in a fairy tale if they think that we're just going to be able to fix it all. There's not a one fix, Getting out of the Draco Empire is that's generational warfare, not one time. Just like we've never defeated the Draco here on Earth. That's a crock of shit. We've killed little pockets of different groups, but the Draco Empire, no. We're going to still have to pay taxes to them. Breaking away from the Jahami is a more likely situation, and that's going to cost blood.
Yeah.
No slave has ever been freed willfully. Let's put it that way. Read history.
Yeah. It's a long time coming though.
But from my personal opinion, like I said, activating our people, as many as we can, getting them to integrate, doing the work, becoming whole, we become more dangerous. Taking over these factions. Once you completely integrate wholly, you can start jumping into, and even before you integrate wholly, you can start jumping into these altars that we have. And we can basically start infiltrating these groups and destroying them from within. There's your answer. You want to stop it? That's it. We're the ones running these programs.
I'm
We're
so
the
terrified of doing that. Jumping into one of my altar's bodies and being them. Holy shit.
yeah,
Oh.
Just imagine 30 people coming together in one sitting and doing that.
Yeah.
Imagine 1,000 of us doing it. Imagine 1,000,000 of us doing it. What group is going to stay alive doing that?
Like, won't they just come in and stop us before we can do that? I mean, they got time travel. We don't.
That's the difference. We do have time travel. We have different groups that have broken away in the future that are coming back fixing shit. Just like with Montauk. What do you think we did? We took it over. It was a transition, but once we took it over and started understanding things, we started trying to fix what we did. And we went further than just fixing what we did until the time was up and a group got a hold of us.
Yeah.
It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't space Jesus status. We were still taking kids.
Blue avians.
But yeah, but those kids that we took, they got a better, those alters that were there that served with us, they got a better fucking life than they would have in any other program. And they got a better chance and they got to actually do something that meant something.
Man, that was a wild ride. I've got the most recall of Montauk, so.
Yeah, you're telling me, man. Trust me. It's an everyday thing now. And, for me, it's hard, because it's like Preston, Preston did a number on me for sure. He's like, oh, you want to bite me on the dick? Well, guess what? I'm gonna make you the worst person in the community. On top of having alters that are the worst person in the community. You know?
What do you mean by that?
In general, like my alter Pindar, he's probably the worst one. He runs the bloodlines on this planet. He is the actual Pindar that sits on the Black Crystal throne. He is the mediator between the White Draco that runs this bitch. And basically the White Draco from time to time will come in for specific outcomes, take over my body. I mean, that alter now is in a clone body, but he will come in, take that body over, give them information on how to proceed, and then leave. But I'm one of his main vessels that he likes to use. There are other Pindars that were geared to sit on the Black Crystal throne, and they didn't get that opportunity. And there are other Pindars on other planets that come from here. And all those Pindars are from House Shaw.
And they
They're on
serve, they
Mars,
stay
they're
within the
on,
White Draco?
I think they serve different Draco that are overseeing those planets, you know?
Okay.
It's like you're
That's the
paying
name.
tax.
That's what your name is Pendar, if you're the ambassador,
Yes,
ruler.
they specifically, that White Draco specifically telepathically contacted me when I was writing one of my names down and said, write down Pindar. And I remember talking to him when I was a kid, being like, what do you mean Pindar? And he was like, write down Pindar. Like the voice was a Draco in my head. It was like, I was like, how do you spell that? And he was like, like I could feel his intense anger at having to spell that for me, you know. And I remember him spelling it out, and I wrote it down. And I remember the guy that was my programmer getting the sheet of paper with the 10 cool names and being like, Pindar, where did you get this?
I have an
Like,
alternate. I have an alter named Zentar that I don't know very much about.
interesting.
He served for a White Draco as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, all I know is that when that White Draco isn't giving direct orders, he basically runs shit. And the Black Crystal throne that he sits on is fucks his mind up. You know, he's not. I mean, other people have served with him. Um, Penny is one of the ones that are public that has served with him. And there are other people that are public that have served with him that haven't really talked about it publicly. He's much worse than I would say Jimmy was when he was MK Ultra'd out, you know, when he was mind controlled out. This guy did it willfully. He joined Nakwaffen willfully, gave them resources to build up their military. It wasn't the be all end all resources, but he gave them a fuck ton and ended up being the captain of Penny's ship for it. Her altar that was on that ship. Ruthless dude, has no limits, you know. When he wants something because of his status and who he is, he believes that it's natural to take what you want. You know, he's the kind of alter that could stand on the deck of a ship and say, blow this planet up and literally connect so that he can feel the people that are on the planet die because they didn't want to listen and obey
That's
and
cool.
indulge in it, you know. Um, yeah, man. Yeah, he went through a lot as a kid. Um, he was the alter that I originally was before I ended up joining with Montauk. Um, after that altar was activated, I was taken into space, raised in House Shaw, served in Nachtwaffen. If you listen to my interviews with Penny, you know, I try to break it down, but it's really hard because a lot of people know him. A lot of people know him, and he triggers a lot of people.
Yeah.
And if you try to contact him, he will fucking talk to you and he will fuck with you. And not in a good way. So
Yeah.
I would suggest that you don't do it. But people tend
Wasn't
not to
planning on
listen.
it. I wasn't planning on it.
I'm just saying in general, people tend not to listen, just people in general, and they'll do it and they will find out the hard way. Yeah, man, he's pretty evil, man. Something else. I don't know. I have like lists of alters names at this point, so and it's past 10.
Yeah, it's pretty
You
big.
know,
Mine's at I
uh,
think 5 or 6, which it doesn't touch yours, but
trust me, you got a lot more than that. But
I know I
yeah,
do.
man. Uh, did you? Yeah, I don't know. I think that 2000 something number is a pretty good accurate description of how many alters we all have. You know, not saying everybody has that many alters. You know, some people don't. Some people might only have one alter. You know, some people might just have. You know, we have Manchurian candidates that go around shooting up places. You know, one trick ponies is what they're basically called.
Yeah.
Like yeah, our whole world is controlled. I'll just put it that way.
Mind control.
I think that if
Really,
they
really
took it
something that
away,
happens to
if
it.
if they took it away at this point, we'd all be walking around not knowing what we're supposed to do. That's my honest opinion. But we are basically a commodity as a species. The ones like us are weapons as well as a commodity. You know, uh, the Draco tax is humans, so we have to give up a certain percentage of humans to the Draco to eat or do whatever the fuck they want with them. They tend to eat us. We are considered a delicacy. They like us. They like to eat us for some weird reason. The Jahami eat us as well. You know, space gods. They love us. Not in a good way. Um, yeah, but we do make good soldiers. We make pretty good. Uh, Trying to think of the engineers for some reason. You know, we can engineer some shit.
I think we're made
Uh,
to adapt to change.
huh?
We're made to be able to adapt to change really well
Yes.
and to be able to innovate.
Mhm.
It's part of our what we're made to do. So for me, it's just it just happens to be like we were made to be weaker in a lot of different ways, but in a lot of other ways, we're made to be stronger
Mhm.
than most species. I would argue, like being more resilient, um, in a lot of ways. But I don't know. That's also a matter of perspective and not necessarily even true. There's a lot of species out there that are extremely resilient and innovative, but we got to
Oh,
take our credit where it's
I,
due.
I think we're like the space cockroaches. I guess we got to equate ourselves to that. You know,
It's kind of
we,
sad.
yeah. Uh, you know, and there are cockroach insect, intelligent ones that exist too. But we are basically the human form of cockroaches. We're everywhere, and it's a bitch to get rid of us.
Yeah, people don't understand. We breed like crazy, despite the fact that we only have one baby at a time. We do pretty good with that.
Yeah, that is an interesting aspect. Yeah, right. You know, we probably couldn't outbreed a lot of them, but we do breed pretty good. Um, we're used for a lot of different things, man, and it's kind of sad. You know, it's sad that we have slavery just in our solar system alone. You would think that our main mission would be to at least stomp that out, right? To the best of our ability.
Well,
But that's not a mission statement.
the whole idea of owning a soul on a person's consciousness really doesn't sit right with me.
Yeah.
I don't think it's right. I don't think it's something that should ever occur. And I think there's an irony in me saying that because I believe I might have been a perpetrator in this whole thing beginning in the first place.
I would say that all of us have,
Yeah.
if you want the truth. All of us have. And I guess it would be, in a sense, this is our penance.
Yeah.
It's a pretty rough situation, and it's crazy because I'll see things and I'll remember them from other timelines. I mean, like years in advance, and just start watching it unfold and be like, what the fuck, you know? Um, I normally align my time frames with like TV shows and video games that start to come out. I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I remember. I've been waiting for that to come out. Cool, we still have time, you know? That's my time reference. I mean, but what else are you going to time reference? You know what I mean?
I remember other timelines where things like were different. I remember a timeline where war broke out under the Obama administration, and it was bad. It didn't go well. I'm talking like intergalactic war, like war with aliens and stuff. It was bad.
Yikes.
I'm fortunate that once Obama wasn't president anymore, I was like, okay, we dodged that bullet, I guess. I was like bracing myself. Like,
Yeah, man, that dude is something else. I'm not gonna lie. Like, he is something else.
yeah,
When
Barack
you,
Obama.
yeah, he knows way more than everybody else thinks he does. He's not some goofy retard, you know.
Yeah,
Um, he is a pencil neck, but he's not a retard.
yeah,
And if he actually came out and was honest, I mean, I think that people's minds would just be like,
yeah. I would use a different word for describing he's not an idiot, but fair enough. Um, but yeah, I get what you're saying. And I think it's funny because I've heard a lot of things from certain people say, um, that he smokes crack and all this weird stuff, and I don't know, dude. I don't know where that all comes from. From what I remember is that he had been on Mars. He was part of the Jump Gate program, and like, well, it's not really that I recall that. It's more that I knew he knew about us at Montauk. And then I found
yeah,
out that he had been to Mars and was like, okay, yeah, this guy knows about a lot of shit. I actually don't remember him from Mars, but I found out through other people and stuff that he had been on Mars. And he was part of some of the first team of Americans that got sent over, I guess, or something like that. But
yeah.
no, he knows a lot about what's going on. And he knew about Montauk. He knew about us.
Well,
Um,
I would say he didn't really know about Montauk because he contacted us through one of his, how do you say it? One of his Joint Chiefs of Staff of the Air Force at the time. And let's just say that conversation didn't go too well, but he learned really quickly that people can get real dangerous
yeah.
when you threaten them. Um,
Yeah, Barack Obama threatened us, and he said he could find us. Yeah, that was a whole thing. I guess it's kind of off subject, but he said he could find us, and then you just showed up there with a bunch of people.
yeah, well, I mean, hey, if you're going to threaten somebody, I mean, if a bully tries to hit you, you punch him back twice as hard,
Yeah,
especially when they're unexpecting it. You know what I mean?
yeah.
You show
No,
up
but
you
he
show up with a
seemed to
few
have.
badasses, shit changes.
People talk a lot of crap about him, and a lot of people don't like him. And I'm not saying
I think he's a scumbag. I mean,
yeah, I'm
knowing
not.
what I know now, it's weird because before I had a lot of that memory surface, and that memory got activated because of you specifically. Um, but
He's an
it
intelligent
what's
guy.
I I always wanted, every time I saw him on camera, I don't know what it was. I hated him, and I always wanted to punch him in the face, and I didn't understand why. I understand now. And after having the memories come back, I'm like, yeah, fuck this guy. He knows about a lot of shit that he could have, if he really gave a fuck about the people, like they try to act like he does, he would have come out and told the truth.
Yeah, but also they could murk him. they could just kill him. He probably doesn't want that.
Hey,
They got all
they
of
could
us.
just
They
they,
got all of us by the balls, man.
they could just kill us, and look what we're doing.
Yeah, but Barack Obama's the president of the United States. We're just two random. You know, you work at a gas station, and I'm a musician, and like I don't know, like we're not just normal people. But we don't really have the pull behind us that the president of the United States has.
I mean, does he really?
If he went on TV and said, you know, there's time travel projects and yada yada yada, people would be more apt to listen than us on the internet. You gotta like find us, and when you look for us, you can't even find
I
us. So
mean,
we're shadow banned.
like high-ranking military officials have come out and openly admitted that there are fucking aliens, and it doesn't. They just whatever, man, that's fake. You know,
Yeah.
trust me, I don't think it would have done. I think it might have done a little bit extra, but not too much, to be honest. Just like it never has. You know, I mean, our own government has admitted that aliens fucking exist, and people are still walking around like retards.
You gotta stop using that word, man.
It's the truth, man. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
if somebody's like, here's a file of reality, and you're just like, this is a file of reality, it doesn't exist.
You've just been used like a word, that's all. But I get what you're saying though. If people do not want to accept it, like I saw a thing earlier today, and it was picture of a giant handing a coconut from the top of a palm tree to a human, and an archaeologist and it was pointed out like giants humans, you know, like the caption was there, and an archaeologist reposted it and said, just reminding you all that children exist. And it's like, dude, those aren't children. They'd be proportionate to children. The giants are as tall as the palm trees and are like handing something from, like, it's just like they openly mock it. Like, dude, like it's clearly not children. It's grown people, and then grown people that are like 4 times, 5 times the size. You know what I mean? Like, and yeah, no, it's really hard to argue with people about it. I have a friend who's an archaeologist, and I'm pretty sure that if I went into it about him about the whole giant thing, he'd probably be like, man, he probably would lose his shit and be like really upset with me. But it's like I've looked into our history, and you know, I've seen the hieroglyphics and all the writings, and I refuse to believe that our ancestors, you know, like we can't take anything that they said seriously at all. I refuse to believe that. Like there has, like, they wrote down what was going on around them, just like we are doing it right now. And how do you feel if somebody came down here or found our writings and our civilization, all of our history, 4 or 5 thousand years from now, found that, and well, that, and we know this is what they wrote and this is what they're saying, but actually it's this way. Like I don't know, like I get it. Like they said some pretty far out things and were being very metaphorical, you know, like all these, like the Bible and all these different things. You can't take them like literally, but also like, can you not? How far do you go with that? The fact that you can't take anything literally, like to the point where, well, just throw it all out the window. Like
Yeah,
don't listen to anything that they said. Like
throw the
why?
baby out with the bathwater
Yeah, like
concept.
why are there all these depictions of flying snakes all over the world? Why are there all these depictions of giants all over the world? Why are there fucking giant stairs that a human being couldn't even climb onto one of the stairs? Like
Because we
why is
have
there all this?
imagination. That's their explanation, right?
Yeah,
That's
because
all.
we built it for, you know, like there's no freaking reason that a human being would put so much time and effort into building these giant stairs like the ones that they have in
I
Peru. There's no fucking way that they would do that for no
I mean,
reason.
just the Egyptian, the Egyptian temples, man. Like they're all aligned. They're aligned from looking from space to Earth. What more do you need? Like we have gigantic rock formations that are put together like certain animals and beings that you can't see unless you're in space or in the sky, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how to explain it any more than that. We're finding that these people that were writing about Atlantis, that were from the Atlantean times, like Plato and his information, we're finding like little nuggets of facts in what he said, you know, um, just all these different people, all these different philosophers that were are past ancient philosophers. We're finding that they were telling us the hidden knowledge and information, just leaking it out a little bit, and now we're coming across like not just the facts of it, but like actual evidence. You got different alien groups that are sending, their souls into newborns, and they're being born, and they're giving information about different things around the world, pinpointing temples all over the planet. I mean, we have Egyptian temples all over the planet. How does that happen?
Yeah. One of my friends who was a history major,
We're still finding them, by the way.
one of my friends was telling me about how there's a shrine to Shiva in the Grand Canyon that's like secret, and he's like seeing the pictures of it and stuff like that.
There's a
Um,
lot of stuff in the Grand. I'm starting to wonder if it's a group from the future, like coming back and just screwing with us. Like putting a bunch of shit in the Grand Canyon, be like, here you go.
I don't know, man.
Because we keep finding all sorts of different cultures, that like different little things in the Grand Canyon, in like these little caverns.
Yeah, it's weird. Well, a good explanation could be that there were just a lot of civilizations that were able to travel around, and they did.
Yeah,
Plain and
I mean,
simple.
I also feel that we have groups from the future, like, or just the overarching group as a whole from the future coming back to change certain things so that their timeline could stay alive as well. Because we could collapse their timeline into non-existence by changing things in the here and now. And, there's a lot of groups that don't want to see that. There's a lot of groups that are trying to avoid that. Um, and, there's a lot of different things, like this reality was created. The reality we live in now was created. Originally, from what I remember, uh, I know we're off subject a little, but the Montauk faction, I remember that originally the South had won the Civil War in the original timeline. That the Nazis had won World War II because of that in the original timeline. And I think the one thing that we did kind of mess with, I'm not 100% on, was the Roman Empire winning more extremely than they did. Um, you know, and like if you were outside of the time bubble, you didn't remember that shit. Everything was normal to you. Whereas if you were inside the time bubble, you remembered that that time was changed. Um, and we changed a lot of that. Uh, it was not a great program, but there were certain things that were changed that bettered our society as a whole, especially America. But I mean, if you're an American group, you're going to help the group that you're with.
Here's a good way to segue from that subject, Montauk, to the subject that we're still on, which is you have Montauk going back in time and making alterations to the timeline. And it is a temporal war, a time war. If you serve for Montauk, you're a time soldier.
Mhm,
Ibis is doing the same thing.
mhm,
Obviously, there are a lot of different groups that are fighting for control that are using time travel. Um,
mhm,
what groups we know about Montauk Project? We know about that time bubble, and we
mhm,
also know about the time bubble that was in England that was run by Marduk.
mhm,
do you know of any other time bubbles where they're doing the same kind of thing?
At this point, no, not really, to be
I'm
honest.
sure they exist. I'm sure they
I'm,
exist
oh,
all over.
well, no. Well, it's like with the one in England, there was houses that were down below that castle in the time bubble that you were in.
Yeah. What about the houses?
Oh, well, different groups live there, different people, like really, really wealthy people.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I remember that.
one of the missions that recently was recalled. I'm not going to go into it because it's not just mine alone specifically, but I'll just put it this way. Marduk was not happy that they weren't paying their taxes. And he wanted us to make sure that we fixed that.
So we did.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't like the way that I decided to do it, but the group tended to fall in line.
What did he do? You don't want to go into detail?
Went in and took a few units in and just started killing some of them.
Yeah.
Nothing like watching your next door neighbor get gunned down. A bunch of different units with guns like coming through your homes.
Yeah, that sounds the message pretty clear, I guess.
I wasn't the most light-handed.
From what I recall, that during that time, the human race was like just a slave race, and it wasn't a secret. They knew it. And
Yeah, well, it's like those houses were like, I mean, 3 or 4 story houses. Some of them. They were for people that run shit here. It's their own little homes, you know. But
these people
Marduk,
were like these
it was
people
his
were high
time
level.
bubble. Yeah, high-ranking people. Yeah,
Also part ET.
I'd assume so. Yes.
That's why they were. That's why they had the roles at the head.
Yeah, I mean, they freaked out though. You know,
Well, you got
like
to.
I don't think Marduk thought that we were gonna do some shit like that. I just didn't see any other way to get them to pay their shit. You know.
You got to be
But
specific when you give
I,
orders sometimes.
well, you know, it's like do this or I'm gonna come back and kill everybody in this base. Okay, fine. You know, fuck it. What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
I don't want to work with you forever. I think we did like I think from what I recall, we did like 6 missions with him for him
Well, I
specifically.
did a lot more than that myself.
Well, you, but I'm saying as a whole, for the when the guinea pigs took over.
When the guinea pigs took
Now
over
my shit's starting
Malta.
to freeze. Yeah. They definitely don't like that. But sorry. Anyways, yeah. So it's I don't know. I think I did like 6. He specifically asked for at least 6 things to get done, which is kind of crazy because he had the ability just to like wipe us out and open a portal whenever he wanted. But that was also because of you and the other individual that we're not going to talk about because they're not public and they're little.
Yeah.
But yeah, and he used, which is fun because he could do it himself, but I don't know why he used you guys.
So
Maybe he was lazy.
we would pop in there and be like, you gotta do this thing, basically, right?
Well, no, what would he would have you guys, I think he would have you guys open portals and he would just like walk up and stand by the portal and be like, I think he came through and like he left and then I was like, fuck you. And we shut the portal and then he reopened it because he knew what we were doing. And he's like, yeah, bud, it's not going to work that way. You know, because at that point, the only way in and out of that base was through a portal. You couldn't just like come from the surface and climb down anymore.
Yeah.
And that was specifically done, you know, so that they couldn't take us alive or stop us. Probably one of the best things I did.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, that's smart.
and it took them a long time to get to us because of that. And the thing that did us in was killing all those Draco that the previous people in charge made a deal with for their tech. They were like, they finally figured out how to get to us.
Yeah.
But it's the time bubble thing. Yeah, that was his own time bubble, by the way. They were staying in his time bubble. I don't know why they chose to stay there. Um, I'd assume it was generational because they had families and stuff. You know, I don't know if maybe they had clones that they would go into to come into this world, or if they just wake up and portal into, say, one of their little homes here on Earth and
Yeah,
just go about their day. You know, I mean, it's not like the people that are in charge. It's not like they have to be here at all times. Some of them aren't even on this planet. They're off in space, like on different planets and stuff.
yeah. Must be nice.
Right?
I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah. Well, most of them at this point are in hiding in underground bunkers, while the people on the surface are being genocided en masse. But hey, all their hard work, and what do you get? You get to live in a freaking small confined space.
Yeah, it sucks.
Right? Um, but yeah, man, there's so many different groups and factions and stuff. It's and so we're starting to learn little groups and big groups. I mean, you have your big ones, which I've mentioned, and then you have your even bigger ones. I mean, the Draco were running different things too. Like they would take Draco hybrids, human hybrids, and they would put us on ships to go work for them directly instead of the Germans. You know what I mean? And all these alien groups, again, I want to reiterate, they all have their own, unless they're a hive mind, they're just like us. They have their good apples, their bad apples. Uh, they're not some special, all knowing, all seeing, all beings. There are very powerful beings that are outside of this solar system, or this universe, I would say. But you're not going to meet them, you know. I guess unless you get like some people meet them, I guess. But I don't know if that's. I can't really say that's 100% accurate, in a way, because most people that do that are like on DMT. So I don't know how to accept that. If it's just drug inhalation, or I mean, seeing some of the drawings that these people make, it's like, whoa.
It
But
sounds like something's going on.
maybe maybe each human is a universe in themselves. I don't know. I have no idea
Yeah.
at this point. But what I do know is that we're at a crossroads as a species, and disclosure isn't the prerogative. That's just that's a side note. Activating people is the reality. You know what I mean? But people in the community want to get off into the woods about disclosure. We're going to disclose that there's aliens. It's already been disclosed. Nobody cares, you know?
Yeah.
Uh, and the people that do care, they're like, oh, yes, finally, they admitted it. Yay. And they're like, yeah, but we don't know who they are, you know?
And the people and nobody cares. And we wanted the people to care, but everyone's like,
Yeah.
well, there's a pandemic and this and that and da, da, da. We've got other shit to worry about.
Well, or they think, oh, some alien's going to come down and invade us. And like, they've been in existence this entire time. We've already been in it from the start.
Yeah. Well,
Oh,
we've
look,
got
look.
like 10 or 8 minutes left. We started. So
Yeah. But I mean, my ending thing is I would say, like the best part is, if you're gonna fight an enemy, you gotta learn who they are first. You can't fight what you don't know. So learning who these factions are, learning what they're doing, who's working for who, um, learning these names, that's the beginning of a war. You gotta know your enemies. Um, it's called information.
And so the best outcome of this war would be what?
For me, the best, from what I can see, the best outcome for us would be a planetary council. I believe that they should be picked by the people, but verified by multiple layers of psychics that can go in their mind and make sure that they're not doing it for ridiculous purposes, you know? They should be elected. I wouldn't say life term service, but we got to figure that out. You know what I mean? But most of the things that work in space are councils. I don't believe in a one world government, but I think that there can be individual states like we have, just with real leaders. You know what I mean? A lot of things are going to change on this planet in the future, depending on what happens. Um, Destroying slavery on the planet is a must. Destroying slavery in our solar system is a must. A unified, cohesive, multi-species organization for military needs to be set up, from my point of view, so that we can work in cohesion together in this solar system to defend ourselves. Are we going to be able to kick the Draco out? No. Not in your lifetime, not mine, probably not in the next 5 or 10 lifetimes. Going off of human lifetimes. It might be a little bit more, but that has to be more of a covert war, because if they really think we're going to rebel, you already know what time it is.
Yeah.
People here probably don't, but that's just the reality. And there's Jahami. We could probably break away from them. Are they going to let it happen? No. But the best outcome is us just being free as a species, trying to free other species, not just making it about humans being free, but other species on other planets being free.
A real Star Wars scenario.
Yeah,
It's
pretty
kind of
much,
what it's like. I mean, I saw in that movie when I watched it, spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen the newest Disney trilogy, but I remember the part where at the end there's this dark Sith group and they're doing this crazy ritual and they don't expect that this call goes out and everyone answers the call and they all come in and it's all these different groups fighting this larger group. And it's kind of like that's the way it needs to be in order for us to protect ourselves.
We can't fight a war alone, right?
Yeah.
You need allies.
Unfortunately, though, the reality is that within those allyships and partnerships, sometimes rifts form, and then there's like wars within wars. It's a whole mess.
Yeah, we have a lot of problems ahead of us. But I think full reality needs to be given to people. The reality is this: the majority of the planet will not want to pay the Draco tax. That's a reality.
And the Draco
They're
tax
not gonna.
literal human bodies.
Yeah, they're not gonna want to pay that as a whole. And I've seen that multiple timelines that I've survived in. So that's a big issue. I mean, how do you handle that? Do you do it covertly? Do you just do it publicly? It's kind of like a torn situation. They definitely don't want to take clones. I'll tell you that.
Who doesn't want to take clones?
The Draco. They don't want clones for their tax. They want the real thing. Huh?
Why?
From what I can recollect and recall, it has a different taste to it.
Wow.
Yeah. But they know, they know, and they'll definitely fucking find out. I tried that one timeline. Didn't work too well. But yeah, man, it's a rough situation that we're all gonna have to go through. And I'm a nobody like everybody else in this community, pretty much. And I guess we'll all be somebodies eventually as a whole. Um, I just would say don't give up, keep fighting, keep trying to heal. That's all we can do. Become whole. Um, I just want everybody to know that I love you all. You're all awesome. We were put in shitty situations, but it's what we do moving forward that matters.
I agree. I think that's a good note to end on. I appreciate everybody for watching and tuning in, and there'll be more stuff coming down the pipeline. I'm sorry that's not more steady, but just keep your eyes peeled. I'm gonna stop recording now. Wait. I want to stop the recording now.